Hi guys, welcome back. So I haven't been posting for a while because I've been busy with my business, and I've been posting some things on the business channel, and I haven't been posting on this channel, Lindbrov. So I sort of wanted to return and make an update for you guys of how I'm doing. So I'm doing okay. Things were hectic at the start of the year. Ended up coming down with COVID, and that sort of blew the wind out of me at the start of the year, but it's all good now. And after that, I started focusing more on, marketing my business, building the business, and trying to get more leads and all that. Because, if you don't get leads for your business, then cash flow is important. It's not the only thing that's important, but you have to, if you're not doing any sales and marketing, then the business is going to fail, right? So that just got me thinking. And nowadays, a lot of people are starting their own businesses. I've got a couple of friends that have started their own businesses as well, and a couple of people, want to start their own business and ask me questions about starting their own business as well. So I'm thinking it would be probably a good opportunity for me to sort of explain how to start a business, right? Just a disclaimer, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at this because I'm still sort of growing my business as well. And this is one channel that I use to grow the business. So I try to use YouTube to promote and also build the brand, build awareness to the brand, build awareness to what we're doing and all that. But so this is more like what I'm doing now is more towards branding and marketing. It's a long-term game, so you have to put in sweat equity and you have to invest in time to build the brand. So it's not a short-term thing. You have to don't think of, weeks or months, think of years, right? Think of 5-year intervals, think of 5 to 10-year intervals, right? Because it's going to take ages just to build your business, right? Now, following steps, I'll tell you the step-by-step on how to start a business, the way I learned it, and I'm still learning, I'm still making mistakes, but this is sort of like a rough guide on how to start your business, right? Because roughly, I think I read a statistic that businesses, about 97% of Australian businesses specifically fail, right? Probably 90% or roughly around the same numbers worldwide. But the thing is, the other statistic about businesses, that the reason why most businesses fail in the first place is because they run out of cash, right? It's not that they're not good, or it's not that the product and service was ineffective, but the cash flow and the operations of the company wasn't as effective, and they ended up failing because they ran out of fuel before they even got any traction or got any progress, right? So today I'm gonna, so at the moment, so we're still, I'll be honest, we're still struggling. So there's ups and downs. We get customers, and sometimes there's dead times where we don't get customers. And at those times when we don't get customers, that's when you have to double down on marketing and sales and trying to get leads, right? And then at the times when you do get customers, don't neglect your marketing and sales, even though you might run out of time because you're servicing the current customers. You still have to focus on marketing and sales. So you have to be able to handle both of it. To, like, for example, to be able to handle say fulfillment, fulfilling the customer's order, or fulfilling the service to the customer, to fulfill that while focusing on so many things. And as a business owner, you have to wear many hats. You have to create systems in your business. Anyways, I'm jumping the gun, but let me explain the steps. So first step of starting a business is you figure out what type of product or service you want to sell, right? Now, that's why there's a recommendation. Usually there's a recommendation to start a business in your, like, say 30s or in your 40s, because of the fact that you've already have some experience to leverage from. You already developed that skill set in the industry, and you've been refining that skill, and then you could turn that into business because you already have an existing product and service, or you can turn your skills into a product in and of itself, right? So, but the question is, what if you're in your 20s? What if you're 18 and you want to start a business? You know nothing, right? And you want to start a business, and you want to create that reputation for people to want to buy your services, right? And it's going to be much more difficult, but the process is fairly the same. It's just that the people in their 30s and 40s, they have a head start because they've been developing and refining their skill, and they've been building up that reputation of being known as the expert in the field, because more people are more likely to buy our goods and services if you're known as the expert in the field, right? And because I have that trust. But if you're a novice, if you're someone who's new, no one's going to come to you and buy your stuff, right? So first step is determine your product or service. And from there, what you do is, if you're in your 30s and 40s, you refine your skills and you productize it. You turn it into a product that you can sell. If you're in your early 20s and your teens, and you don't have a specific skill set that you can market, then what you can do, I'll just change the angle because the lighting's a bit. So what you can do, right, is that you can take online courses, right? Take a bunch of online courses and do a lot of projects, side projects, portfolios, and do a lot of things for free, right? Because no one's going to want to risk paying you money of something that you could stuff up because you don't have that much skills, right? So it's sort of like the chicken and the egg problem. You know how if you apply for entry-level roles, and a lot of entry-level positions don't only accept people with a certain level of experience, and they say, oh, you have to have at least like 2-3 years of experience to actually get an entry-level role. It's because the company wants to reduce the amount of risk that they have to take on to hire new hires, right? So you have to demonstrate that you could actually do the job. So you could do your due diligence and basically just do free projects for free. It's an investment, so don't think about, oh, I'm not getting paid that much for this job. Just think of it as an investment that you're building up your skills so that you can demonstrate it to a potential client and customer, right? And then you make a portfolio, right? You make a portfolio of your websites or your apps or your software, or if it's something not tangible, and if it's like a service or something, you could do what I'm doing, where you just record what you're doing, and then so you can demonstrate that you know how to do something. Or maybe what you can do is, as you're learning, right, you can make tutorials online as you're learning so that people can see evidence of you're actually doing something, right? And you actually know how to do that thing. And it's okay to sometimes you get the imposter syndrome where you're not good enough, but it's okay to tell people that, oh, I'm still learning this thing, because if you're honest, people are more likely to trust you than if you're trying to hide something and then you tell people, oh, I'm the best at this, but you don't actually know how to do it, right? Because sometimes, like, you don't want to be working under a customer that expects too much of you and you under deliver. You want to be at the position where you can either deliver what they expected or over deliver and make them happy, and then you get rewarded for that. And the thing is, if you over deliver to your customers, they're going to spread word about you, and your reputation is going to be built, and it's going to build up, right? So that's the first thing: refine your skills. You have to decide first what you want to offer, and then you refine your skills. You take courses, and then find a mentor. Get someone then who has 5-10 years experience, 15 years experience, 20 years experience, and ask them to train you in that area. But the thing is, a lot of people are busy, so they have to be getting something in return from that. So you have to negotiate with them, offer them something so that they can mentor you to build that skill, right? So you refine your skills. When you refine your skills, in the meantime, because you have to pay the bills as well, so step 2, I wouldn't recommend to start the business straight away, what I would recommend is finding a job in that area. Finding a job in that area so you have something on your resume, right? And also, if you keep that job once you have done the practice projects and your portfolio projects, and then you apply for the job. And if you can get the job, basically when you're applying for a job, it's like it's similar to a business anyway, but it's just that you just have to note that you only have one customer, which is your employer, right? If you are running a business, you have multiple employers, right? So the difference between having a job and in business is that with a job, you just interview once for the job, and then you have that job for a certain contract period, or until you get fired or until you leave the job, right? So essentially, right? Yeah. So essentially, having a business is just interviewing multiple times with multiple bosses, and you have to deliver to multiple bosses, right? Now, so if you can't get a job, or I'd focus on getting a job first before getting the business. And once you get one job, at least one job, it does not have to be at a big company. It could be from a small company. You just have to experience what's the process of working in a company, because if you hire other people and if you run a business, you have to understand from the point of view of working for a company, and so that you can understand that, these are what my employees feel if I hire employees, so I have to treat them likewise. But if you just jump straight into a business, you're not going to have the perspective from both angles, right? So it's best to have the perspective from both angles, and it helps you develop, industry skills, right? Like if you learn the trade first and then you sell that trade as a product or a service, then that's much better than trying to self-teach yourself a skill, trades or something like that, and then you do the job really sloppy because you didn't have the prior experience. You didn't have the prior experience of working under someone or working at a job, right? So that's what I'll do. The second step would be, so the first step would be build a skill, choose a skill, and even if you're going to sell products, right? Even if you say, I don't want to have a service business, I want to have products, you still have to develop skills to make that product in the first place. So for example, software, right? If you're providing software as a service, you have to learn how to program, right? But if you want to make an app, you want to sell that app, you still have to learn how to program to be able to make that app so that you can sell that app, right? So learn the skill first, then apply for the job. That's the second step, right? Once you have at least probably a year or two in the job, don't quit, right? A lot of people say, you've got to quit and then go full on to business. But like I said before, about like 90 or 97% of businesses, they fail, right? So if 97% of businesses fail, then what do you do, right? Like, how do you become that small percentage of businesses that actually succeed? And one of the highest reasons for businesses to fail is because of cash flow issues, like they run out of cash flow, right? So what you do is don't quit your job, continue working your job, but there's a caveat to this, right? Make sure you're honest with your employer and tell them that you're starting this business, because some employers don't like you working, like it's what they call moonlighting. So you work after hours on the business and you work during hours on your job, right? It's best to be honest to your employer and say, yeah, I'm going to start this business. If they say no, you have to focus fully on our business, then it's up to you whether or not you want to have another job, or and that's why I would recommend to actually pick the jobs that gives you the possibility to work on the side as well. Like it could be contract work, it could be casual work, it could be things that it could be related or it could be unrelated. Like for example, the work that I did before, I worked for software companies, but their niche was different from the niche that I was trying to target. So there wasn't that much of a conflict of interest, and I discussed it with the guys that I was working for before. I asked if I was going to make a business, and they said that was fine. So you have to negotiate with your current employer and ask them if this is going to be fine with them, because you don't want to not tell them and then they find out and then you're providing the same services as they're providing, and then they say that's a conflict of interest, and then you get the red flag, and then you get booted, and then that burns the bridge, and then you lose opportunities in the future because a lot of the times your customers could have been your previous employers, right? You could have been working with them, that trust is built, right? And then when you decide to make your company, then your previous employers could be your first few customers, right? So it's best to not burn the bridge with them, right? So once you do that, you build that's basically what they call bootstrapping. So you bootstrap your business, you work while you build your business, and that makes it easier in terms of the cash flow, right? So that will make you survive in the initial stages of the business, right? So second step is get work. Third step is then you jump and you start doing, you start doing business on the side, right? You use your existing network. Don't worry about marketing and sales at that moment, because the last thing you want to happen is for people to think you're a scam, right? Usually what happens is if you're mass marketing and doing sales, right, and pushing for sales, a lot of the times, a lot of people will think you're a scam if you don't have that branding, right? Because what they do is they do a background check. They look at your website, they look at your LinkedIn, they look at, your following, right? Like people that follow you, they look at that and they say, oh, this person doesn't really have a following, and it looks like, artificial likes on their page and all that kind of stuff. And that's why it's best to do things organically at the start, so that you create that organic trust, right? So that's why businesses are very slow at the very beginning, and then once you start, advertising, marketing, then it scales. I was telling a friend of this before. I said there's no point of doing marketing and sales. Well, there's a point of sales, right? But there's no point of doing marketing and advertising if you can't get your first few customers through sales, right? Because what will happen, because marketing is essentially like fuel, right? If you don't have fire, right, the fuel's not going to do anything. The fuel's not going to make the fire bigger. You have to start the fire first, no matter how small it is. And once you start the fire, then you can start adding more fuel to the fire, and then it becomes really, really large, and then it accelerates it increases the size of that fire, right? So yeah, so essentially focus on getting the first few customers, right? And do that while you're bootstrapping, right? And the best way to get customers at the very beginning is word of mouth. So just because you might be anxious that if you share this to your family and friends, that they're going to judge you, they're going to say, oh, look at this guy, he's starting a business, like that's what we think. We're usually the most negative to ourselves. We usually think it's going to turn out the worst, and that's why we want to go to other people. We want to approach people that we don't even know, right? And the thing is, if the person that you know, right, the person that's been close to you, or the people that have been close to you, if they can't trust you to do the work for them, why would a random person trust you to do the work for them, right? So the thing is, work in your existing network. So for example, the first jobs I got, right, was through my network, right? I met this guy at church, and we were just talking about our interests and all that. And I talked about how I used to volunteer at this group in university, making electric cars, and he was interested in my work, and he invited me over to his place to have a look at his laboratory of his prototyping. And that's when I got my first job of prototyping a system for one of his clients, right? So that's how I got my start. So I did volunteering to build up my skills to get the first job, and then that first job led to the next job, because he referred me to the next person, and then referred me to the next person, and then I started my business, right? So the thing is, word of mouth is very powerful. So use your existing network, right? And I wouldn't even begin to start marketing at that point. I would just focus on how much can I leverage my existing network, right? And as you're bootstrapping your business, using your existing network, you're going to build organic trust. You're going to build the traffic So you're gonna build the organic trust, you know, in your network, right? And the thing is, once you have traction with your friends and family and your existing network, that's probably when the third step, right? So the first step, just reiterating, okay? So first step, build your skill. Second step, get work. Third step, you bootstrap, you start a business. Fourth step, okay, so this is the fourth step. So the fourth step is then, that's when you start, promoting your business, right? And do it bit by bit. Go use social media, right? Use existing platform because you don't want to invest in. So at this point, I wouldn't even say unless you're like a software company like us, I wouldn't advise to create a website because there's already existing platforms out there where you can get your customers, right? Unless, it depends on what your business is. So if your business is a creative business, then you probably have to have a website because you have to show off your creative assets and your products, right? But if you're selling a physical product, if you're a tradie, if you're providing services that doesn't have anything to do with, say, software, then you don't need a website. You just need to get connections with your potential customers, right? And then you build that, right? You build the traction. Then once you build traction, step 5 would be, then you increase more of your time to focusing on that business, and don't quit your job yet. If you're running out of time to do things, I would start hiring people, because you've got the cash flow you've got the cash flow from working, say, part-time or full-time. And that's the thing, try to keep your job. And then if you want to invest more time into the business, then you would, I would say do part-time, and then I would invest more time into the business, right? Because, and also don't take a salary, like you can take a salary out of the business if you want, and if you have to pay for the bills, but the more you take money out of the business, right, the more it's going to suffer and going to take longer time to grow, because you have to like, the cash flow is the bloodline of the business, right? So money is the cash flow of the business, right? So I would, as much as possible, keep that job as long as possible. And the good thing about that is it also beefs up your resume, right? So if you've been in a position for a longer period of time, it makes your resume look better. And the thing is, when clients look at your portfolio, they look at what's your past experience, right? So you still want to have that experience on your resume, on your LinkedIn, that you've worked for a company for a couple of years, because that gives you credibility, right? That gives you credibility that you can provide the services and products that to the customer, right? So you keep doing that, and you keep doing that until your business grows, right? Then you hire out people. And the thing is, right? If you read, I forget which step we are at now, so I'm just gonna sum up, what to do next. But the next step would be, if you read the E-Myth, right? So you go from employment, right? And then you go to self-employment. And at this point, you'll be at self-employment because you probably can't afford to hire people to run your business, right? And as a matter of fact, you won't even know at this point who to hire because you don't have that much experience. So what you do is you're probably self-employed and you're probably a sole trader, which is fine. Being a sole trader is fine at that point, but it is risky because you do have that legal risk in terms of your personal assets will be on the line. So you do have to eventually transition from sole trader to a corporation if you want to scale and if you want to attract, the bigger customers as well, because sometimes bigger customers, they want to be working with an actual company, right? A legitimate company. In America, it would probably be an LLC. In Australia, it's a PTY Ltd, right? So at this point, you'd probably consider turning into a company, right? But you'd still be doing the majority of things yourself. You might want to get on co-founders to help you out to balance the workload, because of the fact that if you do everything yourself, right, it's just too much, and you might not at that point even have enough cash flow or money, right, to hire people. So you can hire people, right? You can hire contractors, right? But the thing is, if you hire contractors, they're only going to be motivated by, the contract and the work that you're paying them for, right? They're not going to be motivated for the vision. So you could possibly get on board co-founders who have the same vision as you to build the business, and they will use their sweat equity as well to invest in your business. But the thing is, you have to make sure that those initial founders that you take on board are invested and they're passionate about the idea that you're working on. And because the thing is, a lot of the successful companies that do succeed tend to be the ones that are co-founded by multiple founders, that are managed by multiple founders, because it's just too much for one person, unless that person already has prior experience of, like, for example, if they're a serial entrepreneur and they have prior experience, they could sort of found a company themselves because they have all the skills, right? But yeah, so turn it into a corporation, and then don't hire any employees, because they're gonna pull you down in terms of your cash flow, because you're not going to be able to afford to have a consistent cash flow to pay them a salary, because of the fact that your customers, it's very intimate as well when you get customers coming in. Like, they might just want you to do one project and that's it, and for the next couple of weeks you don't have a project coming in, and you're sourcing leads, you're trying to find leads, and yeah, so they're trying to find leads, and at that point you can't afford to pay your employees, right? So I'd recommend getting contractors first to do those projects, so you can survive. And what I would do is I would calculate, the labor costs of the contractors, right? And then put a margin on top of that, and you would have a margin. So I was watching this, I forgot what YouTube video it was, but usually some companies have a margin of, say, 33% labor, 33% for your taxes and your overheads and all that kind of stuff, and then 33% for your profit, right? But that becomes an issue when your labor is actually pretty expensive. Then your overall cost of charging the customer will be fairly expensive, and then they're going to say, oh yeah, I can't afford to pay for that, right? I can't afford to pay for that overly expensive product that you're selling, right? So you might have to sacrifice profit, and you might have to reduce your costs, your overheads, as much as possible. And this is the reason why you're probably limited in terms of marketing and sales at the very beginning, because when you reduce that 33% to, say, like 20 or 10% for marketing and sales, and then your labor cost becomes the majority of the cost of the product, right? Then you're not going to be able to invest that much in promoting your business, and it becomes a snail pace, right? But that's a sacrifice you have to make time being, right? So that's what you do. You is what they call arbitrage. So you create an arbitrage between the cost of the labor and your sort of like your profits that you get. And the thing is, it might seem unfair in terms of your customer might say, oh, if you pay this much, why can't we just go directly to your supplier and then buy this much ourselves? But what they're not considering is that you're sourcing for the labor and the resources yourself. You're taking all the hard work that they don't have to do, right? To find the solutions for them, and essentially they're paying you for the solution, right? Or else they're going to have to look for the contractors themselves to get the job done, which they can, But then if you're trying to sell them a service to make it more convenient for them, then it's only fair for them to pay for that service, right? So, and after that, right, that's just some of the things that you have to focus on. After that, the last thing I would say would be focus on learning, right? Because you have to learn new things, and learning and persisting. So you have to persist and learn and keep on persisting and keep on learning, because business is hard, right? Don't think that it's gonna work within a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. It's gonna take years. Apple, right? It took them, I think, at least 2 decades for them to gain some success, right? And they're even near to the verge of failing, right? Until Steve Jobs came back. Same thing with Tesla and SpaceX. They're on the verge of becoming bankrupt, and I think Elon Musk even said a couple of weeks worth of, they only had a couple of days left of funds, or a couple of weeks left of funds for the business to run, right? So for the SpaceX, it was like the last launch, like around 2008 or so. It was like a make or break situation, right? So when you're running a business, you're gonna have certain situations where it's a make or break situation. And you have to keep pushing through, right? It's not an easy thing. Business is not an easy thing. So just keep persisting and persisting. Thing is, even if you fail in business and then you have to go back to a job again, you're gonna learn a lot. So some people, they start a business, they fail, go back to work, and then they start another business, they fail. Like, for example, Jack Ma, he actually, if you have a look at his biography, before Alibaba, he actually made another company and that failed, and he went back into teaching. And then after, like, he was teaching, he rallied up a bunch of his students and his colleagues and all that, and he decided, I'm gonna make you guys shareholders, and let's make this business Alibaba, right? But the thing is, most people don't know that he actually started another company before that, and that actually failed. So doesn't mean that if you fail in business, it's always going to, like, your next business is going to be a failure. Your next business is more likely to succeed because you've gained the experience from the first business that you ran, right? But some people are lucky that their first business becomes successes straight away, so keep learning, and I advise to get mentors. I advise mentors doesn't have to be physical people, because even Elon Musk said that he doesn't have mentors specifically. Like, if you consider a physical person to be a mentor, by those standards, he doesn't have one. What he does is he reads a lot of books, and he reads books, and he gets mentorship from the people that wrote those books, and he surrounds himself with a lot of smart people, and he gets advice from a lot of smart people. So surround yourself with other people, right, in business, that want to be ambitious, that want to achieve certain things as well. Surround yourself with those types of people, because if they're 5 steps, 10 steps, 20 steps ahead of you, right, you might trip, but they're going to tell you, there's a rock 5 steps ahead, you have to walk on this side of the road, right? They give you warnings, right, before you even make those mistakes. So there's a saying, it's good to make your own mistakes, but it's better to learn from someone else's mistakes, right? So get mentors. It will speed up the process. It's basically, getting mentors is like getting a blood transfusion, right? When you've been in an accident, you're more likely to survive if you have a blood transfusion, because if you're losing blood, then that increases your chances of survival, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to survive, right? But it increases your chances of survival. So that's what getting mentors does. It's like transfusion. it increases your chances of survival, right? Yeah. Okay, those are my advice and my tips on getting started in business and how to survive along the way, and the mental aspect of it as well, how to think about it, how to grow. And yeah, if you have any questions, more questions, send me, give us a message, or comment down below if you have a question. If I have any suggestions, then please let us know. So basically, the business that I'm running right now, it's called BetterByte, and we make websites for small to mid-sized businesses, and we're gonna aim to be working with larger companies in the future, but now we're just trying to build our portfolio and our reputation amongst smaller to mid-sized businesses. But I have a bigger goal for this company, and that goal is eventually to sell, the products that we make in-house. But at the moment, so the products would be IoT based, but at the moment we're just focusing on web development and software based projects, because those projects are more low risk at the moment, whereas the products that we eventually do want to sell is much more higher risk, and we're not in that position. So that's the other thing as well. When you do proceed in your business, you have to have a risk analysis to figure out what are the risks involved in the business. Do you need licensing? Do you need specific certifications? What do you need? You need to figure that out before you even start. That's another reason why I suggest to start out with the small customers first, because the risks are still there, but because the customer is smaller, and also choose the customers that you work with that are trustworthy and you trust them, they trust you, there's less likely to be issues because the trust is there, right? So for example, you might have to pay for business insurance, but because you don't have any income coming in and you can't afford the business insurance, and you can't afford to make contracts made, proper contracts and legal fees, and you can't pay, it's at the start, you're not going to have any cash flow to pay for those things, right? That's why, to reduce the risk, you need to work with people that, that trust you, and it's small jobs, right? Because it's less likely to fall over, right? Whereas, so for example, if you end up getting a job for a big company as a business or a contractor, and then there's a lot of auditing, and there's a lot of, say, security issues, or there's a lot of things that you have to make sure that you're set up for that, and you have a team. And if you don't have that, if you don't have the those things in place, then if the project falls over, then you're more likely to there's more issues with litigation and all that kind of stuff. So it's best to sort of work with what you can handle first, and then build your way up, right? And yeah, so those are some of my advice. And I'm still learning these hoops as well, so I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm just, explaining what I've learned so far, and hopefully someone finds this helpful and useful in their journey. If you're only about to start, if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s and thinking about jumping out there and starting your own business, then yeah, hopefully these tips can help you guys, or help you specifically if you're a sole trader. And yeah, let me know how you guys go, and I'll see you in the next video.